dear ladies and gentlemen, coming back from Japan to the Vogt-University of Görlitz-Gorzelec, I am very happy to invite Professor Dr. Gregor Vogt-Spira, who is funding professor for classical philology, Latin studies in Greifswald. And today he will talk to us about the funding of cultural politics under the Kaiser Augustus. So we're very happy for your input. Thank you.
Guess. So let us travel back to the Rome in the year 31 BC for a moment. The past 50 years has been characterized by civil war and bitter party struggles. The common good has been completely lost sight of. Exhaustion and helplessness prevailed. One had finally trumped Octavian, who soon afterwards took the name Augustus. The picture is completely different 34 years later. However, when Augustus died in the 13 AD, there is a feeling of having lived through a time for prosperity and order, a golden age that is even called the Augustan century. How did it emotion came about this whispered impression of having witnessed a turnaround from depression and helplessness and happiness and prosperity? The Munich ecologist Paul Zanker has found the key in cultural policy. He shows that Augustus systematically pursued the cultural program over a period of 20 years that resulted in a fundamental change in public opinion by allowing a positive cultural identity to the established. This should be not misunderstood as propaganda, but it based as the strategic utilization of existing cultural resources. This unusual process was probably what my brother Matthias had in mind when he wanted to say a few words about Augustus and the invention of cultural policy. Now, the invention of cultural policy is an ambitious label that the justification for which can be questioned in the two respects. One, on the hand, to what extent they are an invention, and on the other, what exactly is meant by cultural policy. I don't want to go into the questions in depth. In view of the diversity of cultural concepts, it would hardly be possible to so briefly to the brief, such as comprehensive strategic use of a cultural policy that existed neither in London nor anywhere less in Europe, and therefore the label invention are not entirely without justification. For the sake of simplicity, I would like to base my definition of culture of the culture Stiftung der Länder, which sees culture as totality of culture forms of expression, material and immaterial, which people produce in their encounters with their environment to express ideas and values to determine their place in the world. This seems to have to overlap with the Saxon Cultural Areas Act and also allowing the bridge to the Maid Order Augustus installing. So now to Augustus. His cultural program has a structural and substantive dimension. Structurally, he is undertaking a far-reaching reorganization of the public space through huge building projects that are renewing and expanding of the infrastructure, which is perceived as rotten, and at the same time creating new public meeting spaces. This is profoundly changing the general attitude to life. In terms of content, he is pursuing a program that he does not have to reinvent. Instead, he takes criticism of the decay of public life that has been voiced for decades, literary it is used framework for action to replace what is vehemently deplored as a grievance for a positive counter-image with a positive counter-image, and this in the almost systematic approach over 20 years. The expanded thing is therefore on the content with extremely present and wishful image, but the preface Zanke, that is the new ruler, made this internal latent a subject of serious political action. In the following, I concentrate on the structures and briefly touch on three areas of cultural policy: theater, the promotion of literature, and the visual design of public space. The theater, which plays a major role in Rome, originally has its place in the context of festivals in the goods, were accompanied by festivals with sporting competitions and amusements, just like tightrope walking or boxing matches, were offered as well dramatic performances of tragedies and comedies. It was think that over time the scenic stage plays were considered the most attractive part. The audience comprised all social classes, genders, or groups, including slaves. In Rome, the theater was a mass medium for excellence, the place where the largest crowds gathered. For fear of mass unrest, there were originally wooden stages and seats, which had to be rebuilt and knocked down every time. It was until 55 BC that was the first stone theater was permitted. Augustus, on the other hand, built theaters. On the one field of Mars, he constructed a theater landscape of a total of 40,000 seats and sought encounters with the public. The applause at the welcome for the carefully observed as a yardstick, just as expressions of disapproval against individual measures were registered. The theater served as a kind of dialogue space between the ruler and people. It's explicitly now noted that Augustus regularly went to the theater, and if he was absent, apologized for it, and then he was always followed the events, even if they were very extensive, by full attention and let it know when enjoying himself, quite unlike Caesar, who dictated the letters and worked on files while the theater. In Augustus' time, there were 67 regular theater days a year, which structured the years through the fixed rhythm, as well as irregularly extraordinary theater days. In the later imperial period, the number of festivals they increased to over 200. Augustus not only invested a lot of time in the performances, but also of the money. According to the relevant biography, he suppresses all these decisions of the number, variety, and splendor of the spectacles. In this accountability report, which is displayed on board throughout the Roman Empire, he sends quantities exactly how much he had spent on the theater and the place. In general, the financing of the theater is intrinsic matter. The games were organized by civil servants. Schools received certain budget of these hands. However, these public funds were never sufficient, and the civil servants wanted to get ahead later. It became customary for them to pay to rest from their own assets, which then led a competition to see who could organize the more magnificent games and thus buy the most votes. Augustus put the stop to the only allowing the official in charge to pay to contribute to the 3 times the public funds from this home resources, and for those that were less wealthy, he took the cost of his private coffers. We know a few of the plays they were performed. Most of them have been lost. In principle, one should imagine the Roman theater audience as being less fixed and the content. A satirically colored description, their contemporary poet Horace notes that has the impression that the poet is narrating his play of Death Donkey. The audience was inclined towards pleasure to spectacle. Sometimes the play was interrupted for 4 hours while interludes were offered, such a cavalry as foot soldiers chasing each other across the stage with the dome sabers. Or one except who is greeted the rapturous applause when he appears, even though he had yet uttered the word. The applause is for this colorful costume, naturally violet blue from the poison kitchen of the Tarantine gyre. In terms of the cultural policy, it means that it's in the content and the transmission in the ideological messages are central by the performance. The cheerful mood among the people would Cicero saw the guarantor of the stable republic. Let us now turn to the area of literary promotion. First, there should be noted that the Augustan period is the high point of the Latin poetry. Such a heyday is, of course, not direct effect of cultural policy, but there was a pronounced climate of the literary promotion. Mecenas of one of the August's closest confidants gathered a circle of poets around him and so-called Mecenas circle. His name lives on this day to the term patron. It's thanks to the August directing innovation that is of most important work in Latin literature. Augustus' close contact with the leading literary figures that by no means without interest. Frederick the Great later explained that he don't want to be depend on Horace for his image and prosperity, and therefore prepared to write the definitive history book about the time himself. And indeed, it was said the image of the August is not least shaped by the literature. I come to my last point. There is the sign of the public space. In his report, August says that the found of city a brick and left behind a variety of marble. In fact, he developed an enormous building program. Includes for example temple buildings with which he erects the cultural critical diagnosis to the decline in space to the turning away from the goods. By allowing the worship this will flourish again, and he resists a deeply rooted pre-legal guiding principle that we perceived the typically Roman pietas. Another aspect in the discrepancy between the dilapidated public infrastructure of and ostentatious private luxury, with triggers the general dissatisfaction. The solution lies in glamorous leisure facilities for the people. For example, the construction of the first public thermal bath with large water pools, extensive gardens, and the artificial lake for swimming. A leisure park is created directly outside the walls, where the Roman people can enjoy everything that has criticized the proverbial luxury of a villa, such as sports facilities, walk around water courses, and last but not least, a wealth of Greek works of art that was the scaper by the highly famous Greek sculptor Lysipp. Augustus' successor Tiberius was wanted to move the statue of the own palace, but the people successfully protested against this. They regarded the statue of public property. In fact, it has been deliberately placed by August as a symbol of Greek word on the gymnasium. I come to the end. From these brief remarks, I hope has become clear it was a differentiated and strategic way Augustus utilized the dimension of culture. This finds in background in the Roman understanding of politics, for which consensus is fundamental. The basis of the political system is acceptance, and acceptance cannot be won against basic cultural convictions. Augustus was centrally performing a balancing act, and the power structure under the rule was transformed to the monarchy, which was rejected by the Romans and the form of government. It was therefore of central importance that the policies are prepared and the restoration of the old republic and the cultural values. And indeed, this cultural policy was so successful that it created stability.